What's going on YouTube, Gary here, gzduel, bringing you guys something a little bit different. On the request of one of my subscribers to do an instructional video on how to play the Dark World Exodia deck that I recently uploaded, I decided to do it. But in order to do it, I have to talk about the different cards in the deck, and I have to talk about how they're used at what time, and then I will show you guys how to use them through a duel. So the first type of cards that draw I want to talk about are what I call free draw cards. They're basically the 3 upstart goblins I have here circled in red. And basically you play these cards, they get a draw for you immediately. So you don't need any conjunctions, you don't need any setup. Basically it makes the deck a 37 card deck. And these cards, these free draw cards, are always to be played first. Now, the second type of draw cards are what I call conjunctional draw cards. These draw cards consist of the things that I have circled here. The 3 brows with the 3 Dark World dealings, the 3 Graphas with the 3 trade-ins, and the 2 Tragodias with the 1 Allure of Darkness. Ideally, you would want the Tragodia to be paired with Allure of Darkness. I know Allure of Darkness works with Snows, Graphas, as well as brows, but ideally, you want to satisfy the balance of these conjunctional cards, right? In order to make all of your trade-ins viable, you need to have the 3 Graphas for them. So you would have 2 Tragodias left, and then you use 1 Tragodia to be summoned and prevent an OTK, so you can sit on it as a tank, and you would have another Tragodia in your hand. This is like the loner free Tragodia, right? And you use the Allure of Darkness in conjunction with that Tragodia, and you don't disturb the balance of the entire deck. And conjunctional cards are to be played at priority 2. They're to be played second after you use your free draw cards, because your free draw cards will ideally get you into these conjunctional pieces. If, however, you don't have any free draw cards, conjunctional cards are to take precedence over all the other draw cards. There is, however, an exception to the previous 2 rules of precedence. If you have what I call the Snoww-Engine of the deck, then you should play the Snoww-Engine before any other draw cards are played. What I mean by the Snoww-Engine are the cards that I circled here. A discard outlet for Snow, so it could consist of using a Dark World dealings that I have right here, or you can just basically use the 3 Snows and the 3 Dark World gates of the Dark World. So how do you know if you have the Snoww-Engine in your hand? Is if you have an Allure of Darkness, either 2 Snows or 2 gates, and that would be so if you have a Dark World dealings in your hand, that's 1 card. You could have either 2 Snows or 2 gates, so that's 3 cards. And then the last card is the either 1 Snow or 1 gate as the opposite. So if you have 2 Snows, you would want to have 1 gate. If you have 2 gates, then you would want to have 1 Snow. So how this engine works is this. Say you have Dark World dealings and 2 Snows and 1 gate. You use the Dark World dealings in order to discard the Snow in order to search for a gate. And then you use 1 of the gates to discard the Snow. And then you use the Snow's effect to search for the last Snow. And now you have a Snow and a gates in your hand. Activate the last gates, discard the Snow, and search for the last Snow. Or if you have any other conjunctional cards in your hand, say like if you have another Dark World dealings or a trade-in, then the last Snow's effect should help you get into either Grapha or if you have trade-in, you should get Grapha, or if you have a Dark World dealings, you should get Brow. So that's the Snoww-Engine. And the reason why this takes over precedence over everything is because Snow searches and shrinks the deck. So after the Snoww-Engine is done, you would ideally be able to get rid of all of your gates and all of your Snows in the deck. So like it shrinks the deck, it also gives you 3 free draws. That's why the Snoww-Engine should take precedence over free draw cards and conjunctional draw cards. Now I want to talk about jam draw cards, what I call jam draw cards, because these draw cards try to get you out of a jam. And these draw cards are what I have circled here. Are the 2 Pot of Dualities, 1 Monster Reborn, it counts too, and also the 3 Dark World dealings. So the reason why they get you out of a jam is if you no longer have any free draw cards to get pieces with, and you have a whole bunch of conjunctional cards in your hand, but you don't have the other half. So say you have a trade-in, but you don't have a Grapha. You have a Brow, but you don't have a Dark World dealings. So you ideally would then go into your duality, and then you should reveal 3 cards and try to get, if you're lucky enough, you should get the piece that is conjunctional to the card. So if you Pot of Duality a Grapha and you have a trade-in your hand, definitely get the Grapha. If you Pot of Duality into like nothing good, if you Pot of Duality into something like a free draw card, take the free draw card as well. if you pot of duality into what I call the plus draw cards, get those as well. But that's, yeah. And Monster Reborn counts as this category because it helps you get back one of the conjunction pieces. So what I mean is this: if you have a Gates and you require something like a Snow, then you can use Monster Reborn back the Snow, and then use Grapha's effect in the graveyard, bounce back the Snow to your hand, and special summon Grapha. Or if you needed a Brow in order to use that as a conjunction for the Dark World dealings, then you can use Monster Reborn back the Brow, use Grapha, bounce back Brow, special summon Grapha, and then you can use Dark World dealings as the conjunction. The only card that it can't work with is Grapha itself, because Grapha cannot bounce Grapha to special summon Grapha. And Dark World Dealings counts as one of these jam draw cards, is because if you have no other conjunction, you can use Dark World Dealings also to just draw a card, and if you're lucky enough, you'll draw into a Snow, or if you draw into a Grapha, then it would still keep continuing. But I discourage from using this because this way it kind of gambles. So the proper jam draw cards are Pot of Duality and Monster Reborn. These draw cards are priority after the conjunctional draw cards and the free draw cards. Is when you can no longer draw anymore and you're stuck, you're in a jam, then you use these cards. So these are the third options. Now, there are another category called plus draw cards. These draw cards get you more than what you bargained for. So you use one card basically to draw two cards. And these cards are what I have circled here in the yellow. So they include the card Ds, they include the Reckless Greed, and they sometimes include the Gates of the Dark World if you use a second turn. And okay, cool. So so you usually use these plus draw cards at the end of the turn. They are to be used last, even after the jam cards, after the conjunctional cards, and after the free draw cards. They're basically what you do before you end your turn. So you summon so you say you set the Reckless Greed, and then you pass your turn off to your opponent, or you use the card D, and then you set some magic cards, spell cards, and trap cards, and then you use card D's effect, and then you draw the last two cards into your hand to prepare yourself for the next turn. So these are to be played last. Now, these last cards that I have circled here, the 3 Graphas, the 2 Tragodias, and the 1 Day of Peace, these are what I call life-saving cards. They basically prevent you from being killed if you don't draw into the Exodia in the turn. So you can normal summon a Dark World monster, bounce it back, special summon Grapha. That can act as a 2,700 monster that your opponent has to get over in order to get to your life points. Or if you played 1 Day of Peace before you ended off the turn with like a card D, then it would guarantee that you won't die the next turn. Or if you have a Tragodia in your hand and you draw into a whole bunch of cards and you have like 5 or 6 cards in your hand, then you can drop the Tragodia and it would prevent your opponent from OTKing you. Okay, so these last group of cards that I have circled right here with the card destruction, the Brows and the Snows and the Exodia pieces, plus the Pot of Avarice, it also forms a mini engine. This is like the Saki, the very sped up engine. So what you do is, if you have a lot of Exodia pieces in your hand and you somehow draw into the card destruction, don't be afraid. Use card destruction, discard those Exodia pieces. For each of those Exodia pieces that you discard, you draw a card for card destruction. Now, if you also held things like Snow, if you held things like Brow, they can get you pluses. So they count as a semi-plus card. It also counts as a jam card, because if you had those like Exodia pieces, then you're in pretty much stuck because you have like 3 pieces of Exodia you can't draw anymore. But if you have this card destruction, it'll refresh your hand and you can keep on going, keep on drawing. Now, the Pot of Duality is to be played after you discard a lot of Exodia pieces and you feel like this turn I can basically draw them all back. And then you activate Pot of Duality, you can bring back the Exodia pieces that you discarded, and then you can even bring back some Dark World monsters. Say if you had like trade-in in your hand and you want to increase the probability of you drawing a Grapha, you could return an extra Grapha back into the hand in order to tip the balance towards your favor of drawing another Grapha. So they dramatically speed up the deck because they allow you to draw a free 6-card deck, a 6-card hand, and then like you can always get it back with Pot of Avarice. Now, if you draw card destruction and Pot of Avarice at the same time, don't be afraid. Just set the Pot of Avarice so you don't discard it, and then you can use card destruction anyways. And this is to be used, this is an optional draw card. If you're really stuck, you can use this. If you have a lot of Exodia pieces, you can use this, but this is very optional, and I will demonstrate it through a duel. Okay, so guys, here is the duel I promised you, and I will be demonstrating basically how to play all the stuff that I said about these cards being conjunctional draw cards, free draw cards. It sounds complicated, but it's actually really easy to play. So it's my turn. I take a look at my hand. Well, first he does his draw grade, doesn't really matter. I take a look at my hand. I don't have any free draw cards, so I have to use a conjunctional draw card, which is the trade-in plus the Grapha. But he used Dark Bribe, so I just draw a free card. See, now that I'm in a jam, I need to use the jam card, which is Pot of Duality. And I see that I don't have much, so I'm going to get a plus draw card and set up basically for next turn. So I'll shuffle my deck. I get the Reckless Greed. I'm going to set the Reckless Greed, which is the plus draw card, and pass my turn off to my opponent. Now, if my opponent tries to OTK me, which is unlikely, I will just activate both Reckless Greeds and hope and pray I get into a Exodia. But, you know, he just summons a Magnet Warrior, so my opponent's playing a 45 card deck. He's not really much of a challenge. And so, yeah, I draw into gates. I still don't have anything, so I decide to use Reckless Greed. I use Reckless Greed one after another because in case my opponent has Trap Stun, I can chain the second Reckless Greed to the Trap Stun so that both of them won't get Trap Stun in the same turn. Now, see how I have a free draw card? I activate the free draw card, which is Upstart Goblin first. So at this point, my opponent challenges my ruling basically, and he says that Reckless Greed, if you chain both at the same turn, it'll skip your next 4 draw phases. But here I have the ruling, and it clearly says otherwise. So just to get that ruling straight. And I made a bit of a misplay here. I used a conjunctional draw card before I used the Snoww-Engine. You see I have the Snoww-Engine in my hand, right? It's the 2 snows plus the Dark World Dealings and the gates. So I went into the conjunctional, which is okay. Sometimes you can reverse the order. It's not that big of a deal, I guess. So I'm going to use Dark World Dealings and kickstart the Snoww-Engine. So I'll help you guys use the Snoww-Engine. You discard the first snow, and the snow's effect is going to get you the second gates. So you activate one of the gates in your hand. And since you already discarded snow in the graveyard, you can remove the snow in the graveyard in order to discard another snow. Now, if you take a look at your hand, you already have another gate. So you draw a card. That's the one free draw. And since you already have another gate, you just search for the last snow. And then you basically overlay the gate with the other gate. And then you have a snow in the graveyard, right? So you're going to use gate to banish the snow. And then you're going to discard the snow again. And over here, you draw another card. And then you use snow's effect. I've made basically a little bit of a misplay. Since I do have Monster Reborn, I could extend the combo. This was actually correct to get Brow because I do have a Dark World Dealings if I didn't have Monster Reborn. But since I had Monster Reborn, I could extend the Snoww-Engine even further. So I decided, you know, I'm going to return the snow back to the return the Brow back to the deck because I'm not ready for that yet. I can still continue the Snoww-Engine. I decided to search out the last gate. Now, the reason why I did that was because I can overlay the gate with the last gate and then use Monster Reborn back the snow, and then use Grapha's effect, and then bounce back the snow from my graveyard to, snow from the field to my hand. The reason why I can do that is because I didn't activate Pot of Duality this turn, so I can special summon. Now I use Gate's effect, banish the Grapha, which isn't a big deal. I draw another card, and now my snow is able to search for the Brow, which is the conjunctional card to my Dark World Dealings. So I activate Dark World Dealings, draw a card, and then discard the Brow. Okay, and then as you guys can see, I already have a protection. I have like a turn-ending move with like Grapha, but to be safe, I have the 1 Day of Peace, which I will use to draw a card into. I unfortunately don't have any other cards for me to continue drawing, so I'm going to have to look at my graveyard. I see that I have Fiends in them, so I'm going to set the Pot of Avarice and then basically end the turn off with the classic move with Card D. Normal summon Card D because I didn't normal summon. I special summoned the snow using Monster Reborn. Remember that. Now I use Card D's effect. I draw 2 cards. Now I have to discard 2 cards. I'm going to discard the Card D and the Exodia because I already have one. And if I draw into a Lure Darkness, it'll be great. So my opponent's goes. Keep in mind, this is the second turn. I've already drawn into most of my cards. I only have 11 cards left in the deck. So yeah, my opponent sets a monster. Can't really do much. My turn, I skipped my draw phase, and I drew into a Brow. So skipping my draw phase isn't a big problem because I can just use the Gates effect and then discard Brow and then draw 2 cards because Brow allows me to draw another card. And then, of course, you're going to use the free draw card, which is the Upstart Goblin. And then right here, my opponent quits, but I had 2 options. I could use card destruction right now, but I decided to gamble it first, see if my other jam card can get me out of the jam, and it does, and I get Allure of Darkness. So I return the headpiece and the Reckless Greed. And so I use the Allure of Darkness, of course, to pair it up with the Tragodia in my hand, and I banish Tragodia, and I drew into, trade in. So I use trade in for the last Grapha, and then I draw 2 cards. And then I made a bit of a misplay here. I should have used the free draw card first, but it doesn't really matter because, I basically use Upstart Goblin to draw into the last card in my deck. So this is how you play the Dark World deck. And I know all the free draw cards and the conjunctional cards and the jam draw cards and the plus draw cards and the life-saving cards are a bit like hard to master, I guess. But it's basically not that hard, honestly. So you use the free draw cards first, and then use conjunctional draw cards, and then you use jam cards to get you out of jams, and you use life-saving cards, and then you use turn-ending cards in order to set up for the next turn. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any questions on how to play this Dark World deck, Dark World Exodia deck, feel free to just drop a comment. But other than that, this is Gary, gzduel, signing out.